Today we want to talk about individuality versus social identity. I want to specifically talk about herd mentality, and I want to focus more on the potential side effects of adhering intensively to herd mentalities. We function in social structures because we as humans, as we evolved, found out that it is more useful, viable, and strategically better to group up. And therefore, we have social norms, which every individual and every individual whims have to be subordinated to in order to make the group tank work coherently, which makes sense. And therefore, some individuality always needs to be negotiated. But the issue is that social norms are so tightly intertwined with the survival instinct, and survival is in our mammalian primitive brains prioritized, as we know, over anything else. This top priority. Therefore, social norms are extremely important, which can end up in the negation of the self, of the individual properties, which are unique to everyone, and can end up in a mass psychosis, which we see progressively in our societies as the political system, external systems, which in our minds form high hierarchy systems, which feel very crucial for us and are narrowly bound to our identity. We see that people, instead of doing focusing on individual morality, kind of focusing on the basic principle of what Piaget found out when children were playing in the playground, which they found out is as they were playing a game that they do not want to be treated um, in a negative way, and therefore they're not going to treat other people in that way. And because they want to be treated in a respectful and human way, it also makes sense to project this perception and conceptualization of morality onto other people, because we fundamentally, philosophically speaking, there's no evidence that one individual is better than the other. And this very basic philosophy of value system, very complex value system, leads us to the idea that individuality, in the sense reconciled with any moral norms, is more important than arbitrary social norms, which really can be arbitrary as a cow's ass in Oregon or Nebraska. Because people really, and this has been a topic I've been thinking about in the past 2 years, and it's really mind blowing that people, what happened, for example, during COVID or other crises, that people just do it because the group does it. And this is the main reason. There's not much of a deep explanation for that. And you can try to dig deeper to find better answers. But this is pretty much the very basic and central reason why people tend to decide in a way they do. So the alternative, because the consequences of this can be very appalling and dehumanizing, which we're not going to talk about in this video, because I want to illustrate what I just illustrated and then present the antidote to that, which appears to be better, to be a better deal, which is the individual comes first, bound to very basic and non-negotiable morality, which I explained earlier by describing and explaining the example what Jean Piaget observed. And this is a pretty cool finding, by the way. And then you focus what you can do, for example, if in your opinion many people deviate from your preferences, let's say 80% in a society on a spectrum, those 80% on a spectrum, they're not all the same. And what you can do is, I mean, faith to find the right people for sure, and focus on your individual development by aiming upwards and intending to bring the best version of yourself into the world in order to transform the world with the potential, the gifts you got received by God. And I think this is a very good foundation to guide you through social resistance. And I mean, social norms are justified, social norms are important, but social norms can also be misleading. And therefore, it's extremely important to identify the difference between yourself and a copy of social norms integrated into your psyche, which are not necessarily and potentially superfluous, dangerous, and emotional, and well, arbitrary.